Welcome to Tri-City Community Television. I'm your host, Mandara. We're shooting in beautiful downtown Port Coquitlam. My guest today is Lucy De Pieri. She's a classical homeopath, teacher, mentor, conference speaker, and she has her PhD in natural sciences. She's here today to speak about what homeopathy is and how it can help us. Lucy, welcome.
Oh, thank you.
Good to have you here. Just in time for cold season.
Exactly.
We need you now more than ever. Could you tell us, because there's a lot of misconceptions about what homeopathy is, can you tell us what it is exactly and how it helps?
Homeopathy started with the founder of homeopathy, that was Samuel Hahnemann. He was a doctor that lived. He was born in 1755.
Mm-hmm. It's an older practice than I realized. That's
Yes.
Hundreds of years ago. Mm-hmm.
The thing about Hahnemann, he lived until he was 86. That is 3 times as many years as everybody else living in that
Back
time.
then, of course, yeah.
And that allowed him to understand where diseases come from, because he was able to trace, up to 4 generations behind him. Mm-hmm. What he found that what makes us sick is any traumatic experiences or strong emotions that the vital force, his name, was not able to withstand. So, for example, when, let's say, your dog dies, most people will be, they were really upset for a long time, but eventually they get over it. And then that's okay. What happens if you don't get over it? That kind of grief is stored in the body. And over time, that grief can turn into a disease.
What kinds of diseases? Are you talking about everything from common cold to a major disease?
No. Hahnemann found that there are chronic diseases and the acute diseases. And because we are all unique, we have the expression of that disease is unique to our individual. Because thank God we are all different. It would be so boring otherwise if we would all be the same.
Yes, exactly.
There are chronic diseases, which is they are created by strong emotions or grief or trauma, and they're stored in the body and they're expressed when the body can't hold it anymore.
Walk me through a case example. Let's go with the dog example, but perhaps someone has something as strong as a dog phobia. It's interrupting their life. They can't walk through the park with their kid. They can't walk to work. Walk me through how you assess them in order to give them the right remedy.
The first time I see someone for constitutional treatment, I see them for 2 hours, sometimes a bit longer. I need to understand what made them sick, as well as how they are expressing their disease. In case of, you said, a phobia of dogs, I am really interested in how they express their phobia. Maybe, they're avoiding going to the park, or even pictures of dogs will make them freak out. I need to understand what happened. So the question I ask them is, when did it start? And then what was happening at that time? So it probably has very little to do with a dog, or a dog was there, but it could be something like, my parents divorced, and the dog ran away, and I couldn't find my dog, and eventually that is the kind of thing I see on a regular basis. A child that was traumatized by the parents splitting up, they didn't know where they're going to be with mom or dad, and then the dog came in because, where's the dog? I want my dog, but the dog is at my mom's and I'm at my dad. Those are the kind of situations that Hahnemann said, those are the situations that derange the vital force. The vital force is what keeps us alive.
But how do you get people to remember way back when, childhood? I mean, if you have to go back that far, that's difficult to get to.
You will be surprised what people remember, because they get into a state, and then you ask, what was happening at that time? And then they go quiet for a long time, and I know they're thinking about it. They're almost rewinding the movie. They go to a place where it really hurts, and they know it hurts. And then that's often the time when they start to cry. So then I know.
Tears are a good sign.
Yeah.
You're ready to heal if you're ready to cry in front of people, I think. Is that true?
Yeah, that is when, the hurtful spot,
It's over.
they got there.
It's filled. Your cup is filled. You need to release. It's time to get help.
Right. So then, after understanding not only, about the dog, the parents. I need to understand if there was any other thing that happened, right?
How
Sometimes
many things are you assessing? Like how
I'm
many
assessing the human being
as a whole?
as a whole. So I'm interested, for example, about their digestion, what kind of food that they crave.
That has to do with their trauma-related past.
It has probably nothing
What
to
they
do
eat
with the
today.
trauma. It's their human being, the entire mind, body, and spirit. That's what I'm interested in. Because that is where I need to find a remedy that will cover the entire human being. It's not easy. We have around 8,000 remedies right now.
I was just about to ask you how many remedies there are. 8,000.
Yeah.
And counting? Are they creating new
And
remedies every
counting.
day? Because if we're individuals, individual snowflakes need individual remedies. Yeah.
And I was responsible for 5 of them.
For creating 5 of them?
Yes.
Interesting.
I'm going to go back to what happens after I collected all this information. It's almost like I had to put my Sherlock Holmes hat on because I'm looking for one thing that covers everything.
Okay. Is there a fear-based remedy, or out of the 8,000 remedies, are there specific fear-based remedies out of that?
There are specific fear-based remedy, but if I would, and the person, the remedy that this individual with the dog needs, maybe or maybe not there, because the fear of the dog is not the main thing. The main thing was that child being separated,
traumatic
did not
experience.
know where the dog was.
Right.
So the main thing here is grief. And that grief was there for a long time because this child was growing up in 2 different homes.
You're getting to the root of the cause, not just treating the symptoms.
Exactly. That's what we do in every single case.
You can treat everything from the common cold to fevers and whatnot, maybe rashes. I'm assuming all this kind of stuff is more common. What about diseases like MS or cancer, autoimmune issues? How can you support people with that, with homeopathy?
The whole point here is we don't have the cure for cancer. We don't have the cure for MS. But what we do have is a remedy, a specific remedy that will bring that person back into balance. Our body has an innate way to heal ourselves. For example, if you break your bone, and I hope you're not going to do that, if you break your bone, they're going to put you in a cast. And that's the only thing the allopath do, or that can be done. Because the bones literally grow towards each other, and then it takes the cast off, and you can start walking. You might have to do some physiotherapy to get your muscle going. You're good to go. Who actually did the healing?
You did.
The individual.
Yeah, the body. The
the
body
body.
is intelligence, natural intelligence.
Yeah, and that is, so there are cases where the bone doesn't grow because
They're blocked in some way?
lack of
Nutrients,
calcium,
yeah.
nutrients, whatever.
Right.
In that case, we actually have remedies that get that bone to grow. But it's not that it's just literally going to have stitching the bone together. No, that doesn't happen. It strengthens the individual vital force.
The vital force.
So the body can heal itself.
What is the vital force?
It's what keeps us alive. Everything that is living, either plant or an animal or human beings, of course, if anything that's alive has a vital force. It's basically the difference between a dead body and an alive body. The difference between that is a vital force. In yoga, they call the same thing, they call it prana. In the martial arts, they call it chi. It's basically the same thing.
So acupuncture, naturopathy, many of these holistic practices are similar in that way, and they're all addressing this vital force
Yeah.
and looking at the whole body.
If they have a holistic way of looking at things, in some modality, they're more interested in the pieces. So they might prescribe something for this and another thing for here, but they're not looking at the whole being. And so it might work for, sometimes, but then it comes back. Because, they say even in kindergarten songs, the tailbone, the hip bone is connected to the leg bone. We are all one. How we perceive life is part of how we are living.
And how we can heal ourselves.
Exactly.
It's the key. You have a background in natural sciences.
Yeah.
We're looking at, it's basically called a pseudoscience. When you look up homeopathy on Wikipedia, they call it a pseudoscience. There's a lot of attacks in the mainstream. It doesn't qualify, homeopathy doesn't qualify for insurance benefits. Like
Some of them.
Some of them? Oh, then I want to hear about that. But like many, naturopathy, et cetera, are qualified. What's going on here? With your background, you must have insight into, what the real science is. And are there any other facts that could help us understand what homeopathy is as a science?
Wikipedia is actually a great tool, but it is totally biased. And I can tell that because I spent hours editing the thing, and the day after I came back and it was all gone. I gave tons of references and so on. I spent hours and hours, and it was gone the next day.
Mm-hmm. What was your background in science before you became a homeopath?
I was a research scientist. I had a PhD. I was working for Agriculture Canada. I came here because of a visiting research fellowship that gave me 2 years to do research in Canada. I came from Britain. That's where I got my PhD, my first postdoc. I became very sick after having my child and had no mat leave. I had to go back to work when my baby was 9 weeks old, and I became exhausted to the point that I was approaching postnatal depression.
Oh, wow.
Thinking back, I wasn't really depressed. All I needed was some time to sleep,
Mm-hmm.
but I didn't get that. Mm-hmm. And I knew if I was going to go to my doctor, I knew what he was going to give to me. And neither myself nor my baby needed antidepressant
yeah.
because I wasn't depressed.
Mm-hmm.
I was exhausted.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that's what's happening with a lot of women, is they really just need sleep
They-
before it gets to that point of needing more?
Absolutely. They need support.
Yeah.
In the olden days, and I'm not saying going back there, but in the olden days, a woman was supposed to stay in bed for 42 days and was fully supported by food was made for her, the child, she could spend time with the baby, but the most important thing was for her to rest.
And so what was the experience after your postnatal depression?
Somebody said, have you seen a homeopath? And I was willing to see anybody except for my MD.
You didn't know what it was, homeopathy, at the time?
I had no idea, but I went to see this homeopath, and literally, I was there literally for 4 hours.
Yeah.
It became dark, and he prescribed something. I had no idea what it was, but I was ready to take anything.
It helped.
I took it that evening. The next morning, I thought, holy cow, I have a lot of things to do, but I'm not exhausted. Let's get moving. Mm-hmm. And it was like that. And of course, I was still working.
In research? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How did this experience change your way of thinking, if at all?
I wanted to know how it worked. Mm-hmm. So in those days, there was no internet. It was before, finding books on homeopathy was, you could not find. But then again, I met this woman up in the valley. She actually was studying homeopathy, and I thought, okay, somebody's been listening up, because she told me how to get books, and I started to read. I wanted to find out how it worked. Mm-hmm. Turns out that I ended up studying homeopathy. It's a 4-year course at the Vancouver Homeopathic Academy. Unfortunately, that is no longer open now. But my first year, I was determined to find out how it works. The second year, I said, I don't care how it works. It works. And that's what really counts at the end. The thing is, now I know how it works. It works by strengthening our vital force. And going back to what those people, you told me about the skeptics, they really don't understand. The thing is, homeopathy is not based on substance. When you take a drug, it takes you 5 millimeters or 5 milligrams, etc. In homeopathy, we don't have that. Because in the old science, we used to have a glass rod and we used to stir it. If we were in a hurry, we would put a magnet and it would kind of stir by itself. Sometimes it would actually create a vortex, and so it wouldn't stir at all. Mm-hmm. We don't do that in homeopathy. We pound like this. Every time a remedy is created, it's pounded like that.
It's diluted, is my understanding.
It's diluted and succussed. This means succuss. Mm-hmm. That thing, by succussing, we actually increase the kinetic energy in that bottle that we are working on. If you measure something, any drugs, any herbal medicine, mm-hmm. you go to the chemistry department and you will be able to measure it physically. Mm-hmm. For homeopathic remedy, you have to go to a completely different department. You have to go to the physics department, mm-hmm. because we are measuring energy. We're not measuring molecules. We're not measuring grams or whatever, mm-hmm. right? We're measuring energy. Mm-hmm. And that's a big difference that these skeptics don't understand. Mm-hmm. Because it's the equivalent of measuring liquid with a yard. Mm-hmm. It doesn't work, mm-hmm. right? It can't possibly work.
Mm-hmm. Tell me about the science behind homeopathy. Where can someone find the research that backs homeopathy, since we can't find it on Wikipedia?
There is an awful lot of studies, and I have just a small number here. There is an awful lot of research done, mostly in India, actually, because that's where homeopathy is mainstream.
Okay. It's in the mainstream.
It is, yeah.
How does that work? They can go to a doctor that's a homeopath, or
yes.
Okay.
They can go to a hospital and they have the option of going for allopathy. They can have been treated by a homeopath, or they can be treated by an Ayurvedic doctor. Wow. They can, for example, a patient with have chemotherapy is being treated by a homeopath, mm-hmm. to overcome those symptoms, the side effects of chemotherapy, mm-hmm. and strengthen that individual's.
So why is Wikipedia blocking homeopathy right now in the mainstream here in the West?
Well, pharmaceutical companies have a great interest for shutting us down, because right. Our goal is to actually make people better, not make people needing to take more medication because of the side effect they're suffering from now.
Right. What's the difference in testing between pharmaceutical company testing and a remedy testing?
Oh, I know that because I actually work for a pharmaceutical company.
That's helpful information.
They are actually interested in a disease, say, of the heart, or an organ or a system. So they actually only tested on that specific organ or system. I'll give you a very good example. Do you know what Viagra was actually? The target of Viagra was actually the heart.
Was the heart.
Was the heart.
Confuse sex and love once again.
So now we know what Viagra is actually used for, mm-hmm. because that thing that's useful now, mm-hmm. it was actually one of the side effects of Viagra.
Okay.
We don't look at just either the organ or the system. We'll look at the entire human being.
You test on the whole human.
And that's why we have no side effects.
That's an amazing story. You educate people right now. You teach classes, I believe, in homeopathy. Where are you teaching?
I teach homeopathy in the first aid at the continuing education in the School District 43 at the Montgomery Center.
Excellent.
The class is about to start in October.
Excellent. And what kinds of things will they learn?
They will learn about how to prevent getting the flu, by just common sense, or specific remedies, about homeopathic remedies that will help them. And if they have the flu, how to actually strengthen their vital force so they can minimize the length of diseases.
And anyone can go? It's for the average mom, or
it's for anybody interested.
Colleague at work, anyone can go.
It's not the classes are not just about the flu and the cold, but we have classes about scrapes and bumps and bruises, and overindulging that happens often at Christmas time.
Yes. And
minor grief remedies, and drinking too much, hangover remedies, mm-hmm. and minor burns. It's something like moms used to do in the olden days. Well, mm-hmm. not that, maybe 50 years ago. Mom knew how to handle these minor ailments in their family. We did not need to go to the doctor. Mom knew what to do.
Of course.
Unfortunately, mom now, they don't know what to do. They just go to the doctor. And the health system is now so crowded simply because minor things can be addressed at home. And it will save an awful lot of waiting. If somebody has a ear infection, they go to the ER. Mom needs to know how to do that. I don't cover ear infection in my classes, but maybe that's something that I could think about.
That's excellent. And your clinic is where?
My clinic is in Port Moody in St. John Street.
Awesome. So people know where to find you. Thanks very much for being here, for being my guest.
You're most welcome. Thank you.
I've been educated today. Thank you so much.